everybody, and welcome to the fourth episode of Brent Ewing's Hey Buddy podcast. Today I'm going to be talking to an old friend, Chuck Milliken. Chuck's currently on the campaign trail up in Canal Winchester. He's out running for city council this year. We're going to talk a little bit about his platform. We're going to talk a little bit about the current state of politics and touch on a couple other topics, as well as some old stories from when we were kids. So let's jump right in. Here's my interview with one of the OGs of backyard trampoline wrestling in Wellston, my buddy Chuck Milliken.
Hit the video or audio button. I know you said you weren't doing video, so I just hit audio. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. I can hear you. Hear you well.
Awesome.
Good deal, man. So first time Skyping, I see.
Yeah, I'm behind on the times with all the technology, man. It's funny because I used to work in IT in college, so I was like all up on it. And then as soon as I graduated and got out of that kind of environment, it all just blew by me. I just found out about podcasts like last year, I think.
That's funny because I kind of started doing this. I got like 4 episodes in or whatever, and I'm kind of sending it out to family and friends. They're like, "What's a podcast? What what is this? I don't even know what it is."
Right. Well, I heard people talk about it. It's like, well, I don't even know. Like, how do I get a podcast? How do I listen to a podcast? And so eventually, I buckled down and just looked it up, and obviously everything's so easy nowadays. It doesn't really matter.
I know, right? I kind of ventured out and listened to when Joe Rogan, first came out, Mark Maron,
Yeah.
guys like that, and then of course, the wrestling podcast started, Steve Austin
Yeah.
and Chris Jericho and Eric Bischoff. Man, I'm like, oh, this stuff is cool. This is some really, really cool behind the scenes stuff that you wouldn't get, anywhere else. It's kind of just a one-on-one interview, and you really you learn a lot.
Yeah, it's just a more intimate setting, and there isn't all the production value that you get with television and radio. It's just a different medium. It's great.
Exactly, exactly. I like it. I like again, I'm not a big public speaker at all, but I thought, man, I kind of want to start talking to some of my buddies about, about sports, about wrestling, about politics, whatever. I was like,
Yeah.
how can I do that? I don't want to go on YouTube. I don't necessarily want my face, you know what I mean? I don't want my face
Yeah.
out there. I don't want to put video. So I was like, man, I can do a little podcast and put some audio out and, see how it goes. And so far it's been pretty fun.
Awesome. Yeah, that's you sound exactly like me. I actually had that same kind of thought too. Me and a friend of mine have always talked about doing a more locally focused sports podcast.
Hmm.
Uh, but we just are with our schedules, we can never find the time to do it. Plus, like I just said, I have no idea how to even begin to do it.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm still learning too, man. I just went on SoundCloud and like created an account, and I'm trying to learn how to add it to iTunes and add it to Spotify and things like that. But even for
Yeah.
me, it's like it's still over my head. I have to call buddies, and I'm like, hey, what do I do here? Can you walk me through this? Because
Right.
again, I just the technology, it's yeah, it's so
Yeah.
advanced now. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So how's things been, man? It's been probably a few years since I've actually seen you and talked to you.
Yeah, I'd say several years. Man, life's a whirlwind sometimes, man. It's just you go through, at least in my family, we've gone through, so many changes. I could be here all night just telling you about all this stuff. Nothing like really negative, just on a level of, kind of finding yourself still and your place in this world kind of
Hmm.
story, for my wife and I both. And so, yeah, it's kind of one of those things where as soon as we started walking with God a little bit closer, um,
Hmm.
everything became a lot more clear, and it's still becoming more clear to this day. So
Right.
it's just it's fun now. So
That's awesome, man. I always enjoy reading your posts anytime you have something, some religious quote or just some kind of banter that you like to go back and forth, with
yeah,
people who may not be a believer. I'm like, oh, Chuck's involved. I gotta read this. You know what I mean? And I
yeah,
appreciate it. It's good to see because I feel like people, a lot of people our age kind of shy away from religion. I'm not going to talk about that. And kind of in my job, as a therapist, I go in and see people of every different faith, every different religion, and you do kind of have to step around. And it's like, okay, we're here for therapy only. If you want to talk about your faith or whatever, I'll talk, we'll listen, but I try not to step on any toes. But it's cool to see you put that out there and on a platform where, well, I'm not afraid to talk about this right now. Let's go at it. Let's debate.
Yeah.
Um, it's always cool to see, like, one of my best friends, Andy Parsons,
Yep.
and you guys kind of go back and forth because Andy, unfortunately, Andy kind of he has questions and he doesn't necessarily believe what we believe, but he's someone who will listen. He'll take, okay, I'm gonna talk with you. I want to learn. I want to listen. I want to get some insights from you and see if it changes my view on things. You know what I mean? So I really like when he goes back and forth with you on Facebook. It's really a fun time for me anyway.
Yeah, that's one of those things too. I got to a point in my life where I realized, yeah, I was always the one kind of out there stirring the pot and getting things going. And I'll still kind of put something out there from time to time. But you come to a point and you realize, you're not really having any effect on it. You're not really changing anybody's minds on Facebook, because people are going to say things on Facebook they never say to your face. And so they're never going to see things your way through that medium. It's more of has to be a face-to-face conversation. People need to like relate to somebody to really have an influence on them. So
Hmm.
I just kind of gave that aspect up a little bit.
Sure, I agree with that 100%. Because again, you could tell your side of the story, I'll tell my side of the story, but we're never going to agree. It's like, but
Yeah,
I appreciate people who can have that discussion and not just immediately start, oh, you're wrong, I'm right, whatever, and start calling
yeah,
names or you know what I mean. Just have
yeah.
a civil discussion. That seems to be a thing that's hard to do in this world anymore.
Right. I mean, I always try to put myself in the other person's shoes and just not necessarily look at their viewpoints as, right or wrong, but I try to just personally understand why they would feel that way, and have some empathy towards that. And, I can see why you feel that way, and it all makes sense. I disagree with that, and that's okay. Like, I just wish more people would be able to do that. The rest of the world was like that. So
I agree. I agree, man. I saw a thing. I was looking back through your page a little bit today, and I just saw one of there. You had like a meme up, and it said something along the lines of like when they say they can't trust the Bible because it's written by man, but they believe newspapers, scientific
yeah,
journals, and things like that. It's like, yeah, like your argument doesn't really hold water when you're like, oh, that's written by man, but
yeah,
let's believe the science. Well, science comes from man. It's like what?
yeah, yeah. So one of my favorite authors right now, he talks about that a lot. He says, science doesn't say anything; scientists do. And so,
Exactly.
yeah, I that's why anybody I have a conversation with, and that's why I get so passionate about it, because um, I never really knew about this resource in this area called Christian apologetics. Once I found that, man, that lit a fire under me. I said, man, there's because you were inundated day in and day out through the media of all this, evolution and science, and it's just passed off as common law and knowledge, and
Hmm.
it's really not the whole story. And once I started researching the other side of the story, it's like, man, people have to get this information. It's so good.
Right. Right. I agree, man. Well put. Like you said, anything in the media anymore, and the media is typically pretty left wing driven, and it's like these kids are growing up listening to this, again, this one side, and it's like, man, do some research, find out some stuff for yourself, read and study and learn, and then if you still believe that way, cool. But
Right.
don't be ignorant to everything and just, well, I believe this because Joe Schmo on CNN told me, or I believe
Yeah.
this because this person told me. Well, how about read it for yourself and kind of form your opinion that way.
Yeah. And it's not like I sit there and read everything and, just swallow the Kool Aid and, spoon feed. I mean, I sit there and question some things that I read too. I was like, well, I don't know if that necessarily makes sense, but I'll roll with it a little bit.
Right, and I think you have to. I think that's again, I'm the same way. It's like certain things you'll read and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna question that a little bit more. Not that I'm saying I don't believe it, but let me
Yeah.
look a little bit more into it, research a little bit more into it.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Again, I appreciate those conversations, and it's cool to see somebody our age being able to have conversations like that because I think religion has Christianity especially. It's kind of like you can't really come out and say a whole lot without getting I won't say look down on, but it's almost like that's the religion right now, that if you say anything that might not agree with somebody else, well then, oh, you're a bigot or a racist, or you're attacking me, my faith, whatever. It's just kind
Yeah.
of it's a weird world right now.
Yeah, I almost feel like I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but the majority of people that have those kinds of feelings, at some point in their life, religion has left a bad taste in their mouth to some degree,
Hmm.
and they continue to have these negative feelings towards the Christian faith when they've obviously put in their hope and salvation in man.
Hmm.
If you're going to put your trust and faith in a pastor or a leader at a church, people, kind of tend to put them on a pedestal and think that they're flawless. No, they're not flawless. They're just like you and I, and you're missing the whole point of the gospel. So,
Right. Yeah, well said. One of my biggest complaints is people are like, oh well, if they're a non-believer, oh, if God exists, why does He allow bad things to happen? Why did 9/11 happen? Why are all these people getting killed in wars? It's like, man, I don't know that question. Or I don't know
yeah,
that answer. Like, it's not for me to know, but it's not gonna change the fact. I'm not gonna say, well, God allowed this to happen. That's not how it works.
yeah. And that's man. There's the guy that I read a lot. Like he has a lot of good answers to questions like that, and that's those answers are out there, and we just got to find them and research them and be prepared to answer them. He always quotes 1 Peter 3:15, where it says, "Always be prepared to give a defense for the hope that's within you,"
Hmm.
which is powerful for me. That really struck me. It's like, if I'm going to sit here and claim this gospel and these are my beliefs, I need to be well prepared to defend
Right. Right. Yeah. Very good, man. Very good. Well, we'll step away from religion a little bit.
them.
Family wise, how's the family doing? You got a beautiful family, man. Every time I see the pictures, I'm like, good for Chuck. You did well for yourself.
Yeah. I met my wife Danielle in college, my senior year. We've been together. This will be our 10-year anniversary in September.
Wow.
Um, our oldest son Charlie just turned 8 in July, and our youngest son Rory just turned 4 in July. And man, the two kids could not be more different. It's so funny. I don't even think they're brothers sometimes. Charlie is just so just quiet and neat and to himself, but he's not afraid to get out there and be silly. But he's just a different kid, and Rory's just the more he's a boy's boy, like rambunctious, not afraid to get dirty, a little louder. But they're both extremely entertaining all the time, and they definitely wear you out for sure.
I bet. I bet. Does the 4-year-old, are they going to school yet? Preschool, anything like that?
Yeah, so he'll be in third grade. Rory's starting pre-K.
Okay. Okay. Exciting time, huh?
Oh yeah, it's definitely a busy time of year, especially with me getting into the campaign season.
Mhm.
I'm heavily involved at the church, doing running the welcome teams and the usher teams, and I run all that. And then I'm also trying to get a men's ministry up and running too. So and
Wow.
I
Very cool.
plate is completely full.
No kidding. Good for you, man. Good for you. How's mom and dad and sister? They all doing okay? I think I saw where your dad had retired not too long ago.
Yeah. Oh man, he was teasing it for several years. He's like, January, I'm done. I'm not coming
Hmm.
one day. And then January come and pass, and then he would do that for like 2 or 3 years, and then man, it was just one day out of the blue. He's like, I think it was in May or March. I mean, it wasn't um, there wasn't much notice. He just like I told him end of June I'm done, and we're like
Wow.
okay, yeah, we'll believe it when we see it. And June came and he was out, so we were
Good
proud
for
of him.
him.
Finally pulled the trigger, and now we're all just kind of waiting for mom to pull the trigger and move up here to be close to all of us because we all live up here close to each other now too.
Okay. Okay, good. Yeah, I see. And I forgot to ask, obviously I said your sister, but I forgot about your younger brother. I haven't seen him for years. I think the last time I saw him, he was giving me some kind of stone cold stunner on the backyard trampoline or something, but that's
Yeah,
been
man,
years,
I'll
man.
never forget that. That's such good times. Yeah, so Alex lives up here in Pickerington. He actually, for his wedding, for the introductions to the reception, we all came out to a different wrestler's theme song and kind of dressed up. So I was Hulk Hogan, obviously, and I had like red pants and the yellow boa and the mustache and the bandana and the sunglasses and just doing all his gestures and things. And Alex, of course, comes out to the crash of the glass and Stone Cold, and Kevin Lenan throws him a beer, and Alex opens it up and chugs it, and it was great. Jake
Dude,
Wallman got
that's
the video of it somewhere, I think.
That's phenomenal. I would definitely like to see that. That's amazing. We had some fun back there. I tell the story all the time if people are, dogging me because hey, I still watch wrestling occasionally. I'm not a huge fan like I used to be, like we used to be. Heck,
Right.
that's all we
Yeah.
talked about at practice and stuff. But I'll watch it occasionally and you still get razzed. Oh, you're 37 and you're watching wrestling, that fake stuff. I'm like, dude, but we had so much fun. I still remember I still remember you being like, "Man, come on over. I'm gonna, I'm gonna take a table from." I can't remember where you got the table from, but somewhere at school you stole a table. Do you remember this? And
I remember acquiring a table. I
yes,
don't know
that's
how I
that's.
acquired.
Let me rephrase that. A table appeared somehow in your truck, and then it appeared in your backyard. And I remember at first I took a 3D through that table when it was unbroken. I was
Yeah.
like, that's not too bad. That not a bad fall. And then we
Huh?
just laid that table back together, and I got power bombed through that without any support.
Yep.
Dude, I think my back's like when I wake up in the middle of the night. Sometimes I'm like, man, what happened? Oh yeah, power bomb back in 99.
Oh man, that's classic.
That
Oh
was
yeah,
so
there
funny.
was we had no fear back then, man, for sure.
Do you remember the time me and Lusk pulled in and we just kind of came out of nowhere and we went into your garage and found like
Bicycles.
two little bicycles, put the helmets on, came back there and just started beating the tar out of people, and then
Yeah.
just took off and just took off and rode away.
Yeah, it was that's easily my favorite memory by far. And you guys did the little music too to it. It was just
Yeah,
great.
it's
I
hard to
remember
believe that's been 20
I've got
years,
a
huh?
scar on my back still from where we were actually. I think the best weapon we had was probably like baking sheets,
Oh yeah,
because
those were.
you could really wing at somebody with those, and it really didn't hurt, but it looked really painful. And you'd beat them, so many times it basically turned into tinfoil.
Right.
And so at one point, one of them kind of split open on the side, and Davis picked me up to power slam me. And when he picked me up on the trampoline, it kicked that baking sheet up,
Oh
and he slammed me on top of it, and it just sliced me open down my back.
man, my mom still tells stories about that all the time about us wrestling at the house, and it always
Yeah.
goes back to her cooking sheets. Me and Bub Dunn, we just destroy. I don't know how many. We would go in. I wouldn't even ask. I'm just like, I'm gonna go in there and take this cookie sheet. We'll be easy with it. And then it comes back and it's like the shape of a letter L. I'm like, I don't think you're gonna be using this guy anymore.
Oh, that's classic.
So much fun back then, man. Gotta miss
Oh,
those days for sure.
yeah.
Like I said, it looks like you're doing pretty well for yourself. What as far as the politics, when did you kind of become interested in maybe a political career?
Well, um, I, so I don't know about the career aspect part of it. I've always just kind of had an interest there. I think coming from a family that has always participated in the political process to some degree, as it was the kind of, I guess, the seed that was planted. And if anybody that's known me on Facebook throughout the years, like we spoke about before, I was the one throwing stuff out there just to get people going, and it was exciting and interesting, and I was probably young and juvenile about it to some degree. Um, but as far as getting involved in the process, I mean, um, at some point, like I said, you kind of got to stop with the talk. And if you want things to change, and if you want to have an impact, you got to, get in the arena and do something about it. I never really thought that this would happen, to be honest with you. I kind of told myself that um, if the opportunity presented itself, I would highly entertain it, if not go for it. I was never really one to want to just take it upon myself and go out and do this. I never felt like I had the personality for it. Um, I consider myself to be strongly introverted, and a lot of politicking is requires you to be out there, glad handing and smiling, and that's, I mean, I can do all that stuff, but it's just not my nature. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so to keep the story from being too long, essentially, what happened was my wife and I moved recently. Our family moved, and we decided to, sell our house to pay off student loan debt, and just rent for a while. And so, our landlord is the sitting vice president of council, and he's up for reelection this time around. And he was having a conversation with my wife Danielle, and just straight up asked her. He's like, "Hey, I know this is probably a no, but would either you or Chuck be interested in serving on council?" And she just lit up at when she heard that. So, "Oh, Chuck loves politics," and just it was over from that point. And he called me, said, "Hey, we'd love to have you if you're interested." So I sat down with him and the president of council and another guy who's up for reelection, and they said, "We love you, and we'd love to have you alongside with running with us this campaign season." And I said, "Sure."
Awesome, man. Good for you. It's funny that you say you kind of see yourself as introverted because I don't see that at all. Obviously,
That's what
I
everybody
always, yeah, I always see like always outgone and funny and kind of the life of wherever you were at. You know what I mean? But it's funny how we kind of view ourselves as because I'm
Yeah,
the same way. I'm really introverted. I'm really again one on one. I feel like I'm really good, but there's no way I could get into what you're doing. That's just something that kind of blows my mind that people can do that type of thing. With the job I have, I kind of came out of that shell where, I'm like, oh man, I don't want to talk in front of all these people. Well, now you go into a patient's room with, 8 or 10 family members there and you got to treat their mother or grandmother. And it's like, okay, I can't just walk out and say, hey, I'll be back when everybody's gone. It's like, this has to be done. So it kind of brings you, things you're passionate about will kind
yeah,
of bring you out of that shell. So that's where I definitely think you'll excel in this for sure.
yeah. Well, I think for me, it's different. Whereas if you're speaking to a bunch of people and it's more of an informal setting as opposed to standing up in front of people and giving a more scripted like speech kind of environment, I mean, I've always struggled with giving speech. If I'm talking about something like just you and I here on the phone and it's just off the cuff, as if we're just having a conversation, I have no problem with that. It's just when I go up in front of people and there's specific things that I want to say and I want them to hear. I'm just very bulleted and concise, and I have a tendency not to elaborate on things. And so that's something that I've had to overcome and work on. And it kind of goes back to what you were saying about you don't really see the introvertness in me, and most people will tell me that. Um, that's just my nature, but it all I try to step outside myself, and I'm always looking to grow and better myself in every way. And if I want to do some of the things that I want to do in life, I have to learn to, step outside of my shell, step outside my comfort zone, and be able to do some of the things that I wouldn't necessarily want to do if I just sat at home all day.
Right. It's so easy to get trapped in that shell and man, I want to do this. I want to try this. I want to try this. Well, you can want and want and want and then 10 years goes by and you haven't done it. But it's like, man, just get out there and do it. Same with what we're doing now. It's like, man, I want to do this. I want to see how it goes. Just go out and do it. So
Yeah,
what if it doesn't go well? So what if nobody listens? Still you went out and did something you wanted to do. You put your heart into it, you put your soul into it, and you feel good about it.
and you're not gonna realize it at the moment. But later on down the road, like there's gonna be a benefit that it's a learning experience. Failure sets you up for success. Like those things are very, very important. You have to go out and be willing to put your nerves on the line and how you feel about yourself on the line. I always encourage people, if they're looking for a change in their life or if they want to do something, I mean, just take the smallest step. I take weight loss, for example. People want to get in and just hit the gym and do it 5 days a week. And no wonder people quit after 2 weeks of their New Year's resolution, just don't go in with the attitude like that you're just going to burn up the gym 5 days a week, an hour a day or whatever, just start by getting your foot in the gym first. Maybe it's
Right.
only once a week, but start with something you can handle. And then once you got comfortable with that, maybe up it a little bit. And so anytime I've tried to make a change in my life or do something that's outside of my comfort zone, I always try and start small and just see where I can push myself to kind of expand that boundary and push that comfort zone.
Right, and just keep pushing, keep like you
Yeah,
said, if it's a small step or not, just keep pushing, man. Keep doing it. Life is definitely way too short. Again, I've not seen you in who knows how many years, and it's like, dude,
yeah.
we're almost 40 now. Like, where did that go?
It's unbelievable.
So, city council for Canal Winchester, correct? That's the that's the goal, man. Give me some give me a little bit about what you want to see, what kind of changes you want to see, what kind of difference you want to make.
Yeah, I always I kind of steer away from using words like changes. I'm not looking to change anything. I gave my first quote unquote stump speech a week or two ago. We had a meet the candidates event. And I talked a lot about just I think it'd be foolish for me coming in first year and say, well, I want to do this and I want to do that. Well, I'm one person on a council of seven.
Hmm.
I don't want to do. I mean, there's things that I would like to see happen, and I'll talk about those in a second. But there's six other people on this council. If they're not on board with what I want to do, then what I want to do is not get done, and I'm going to look like an idiot if I went out here and said I'm going to do all this stuff.
Hmm.
So Canal Winchester is, man, I think it's the greatest small town in all of America. This is like when I go back home to Wellston and I see Wellston, I was like, man, I wish Wellston could be like Canal Winchester. It's just a really small town and it's thriving, and it's far enough away from the city of Columbus where you don't feel like a big city, but yet it's just a quick drive down the road. But so for some of the challenges that we have right now is that people want to move here, they want to live here, so we're seeing a lot of growth, and people are concerned about maintaining that small town feel. And just next door in Pickerington, people have told me it's like, hey, we don't want to become Pickerington because Pickerington was very similar to Canal, and it just got too big too fast. Um, our schools are bursting at the seams, so we need to kind of let our foot up off the gas as far as residential growth and maybe focus more on the economic business side of things. But Canal doesn't have a curbside recycling program.
Wow.
I think most people who have followed me on Facebook, and this is where I like to pride myself as a realist. It's like I personally, and this is controversial, I personally don't believe in the whole global warming thing. I think it's a big hoax. I think it's science trying to make more money. But that's neither here nor there. That doesn't matter. The reality is, recycling is still good for our environment. People want to recycle. I would say 9 out of 10 people want to do this. So the contract that we have with Waste Management is coming up next year, and that's something that I would definitely like to accomplish. Like we need to definitely keep up with the times in this area and get some kind of curbside recycling pickup program with them for sure.
I like that thought, man. Wellston used to have that, and they stopped it a few years ago, and now it's like there's a couple different places in town where you can take recycling stuff out there, and my parents still do it. But every time you go, it's filled to the brim. So
Yeah.
people want to recycle, people want to do this,
Yeah.
but it's like, why did you take that away? Why did you
Yeah.
take those recycle bins away? Why did you take that program away? I don't see how it can really be that much more costly.
Yeah, I mean, so from what I have heard, I haven't yet to be in any discussions or negotiations with any of the waste removal companies, but we're talking maybe $12 to $14 increase on your bill. Um, I mean, I wouldn't want to see that on my cable bill, but maybe on my waste bill if I'm seeing, that extra service and that recycling. I'm not having to drive my recyclables to another location to drop them off. Because yeah, we have that here too currently. It's just a big inconvenience, and they're already here doing the rest of our waste pickup. So why not just take care of that too?
Exactly. It's like you want people to recycle. You want them to do good for the environment, but then you make it hard on them. Like a mother of four who's driving her kids to practice at different places at different times, and is she going to make time to, okay, well, we got some plastic bags here, we can go drop those off at the recycle center or whatever. They're probably not
Yeah,
going to make that effort because they don't have the time. Not that they don't want to, but make things a little bit easier. It's for the good.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Very good, man. Well, like I said, I'm proud of you. I look every time I read your page, and you always put stuff up that, like, I've always thought highly of you anyway. And when I saw
Thank you.
that when you were going into the politics stuff, I'm like, man, that's kind of perfect for Chuck. I mean, really, just reading, reading posts and things like that. Again, having not talked to you forever, but just it's kind of, I can see that being up your alley, and I think you'll be super, successful with it. Whether you want to continue after this or not, I think, you know.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's funny. One of the pastors at our church he's already calling me congressman. So
Hey, man, if that's something you want to do one day, like I said, I think you'll definitely go as far as you want to. And I'm gonna try to share the link that you sent me on my Facebook page because I donated to the campaign for you the other day, and hopefully
saw that.
more people
Thank
will
you
do
very
that.
much. Yeah,
Of course,
appreciate
and absolutely anything that I can do, for sure I would. If I was up there, you would have my vote. You talked about coming back to Wellston. Let's switch gears to
it. Yeah,
Wellston for a little bit. And for me, being away so much, I'm still back there, for a few months every year. But it's tough. It's tough to go back. It's tough to see all the for sale signs in the yards.
hmm,
It's tough to see a dead uptown. Even Friday and Saturday nights, it's completely dead uptown anymore. And I mean, it's
yeah,
been when we were in high school, hasn't been that long ago. But even just us getting out, and the big thing back then was, hey, we're cruising around the block. You
yeah,
know, we see cars. We go around two or three times. Guess what? We're going to Jackson. We're cruising that block.
yeah,
You don't even see people uptown. It's just, I know they're trying to bring back the Louis. They're doing some stuff there, and hopefully over the next few years that becomes a reality, and they can get some different live performances or some kind of some shows. I think they want to put on some stuff like the Marquee does in Jackson,
yeah,
but it's like, man, we need some kind of businesses to come in up there that's really going to turn things around. I know Matt Peterson and a couple guys, Nathan Mollahan, Jeremy Smith, those
yeah,
guys are trying to put in a new pizza shop uptown. I hope they're super successful.
yeah.
um but it's sad with the factories closing in Jackson within the last 15 years. And if anything ever happened to General Mills, I'm afraid it would be a ghost town up there because there's just nothing.
Oh
There's
yeah.
nothing there. You know?
Yeah, unfortunately, you know, it's great. You can bring in all the business you want, and it could be some of the most successful business people out there. But if people aren't, if there aren't good jobs, good paying jobs, and enough of them, there's no good business that could succeed. And so the problem is I think in my personal opinion, with that area is you need more places and more diverse jobs. Not just the Belicio Foods plant, the General Mills plant. It's all manufacturing for the most part, and there's nothing wrong with those jobs. But there needs to be some sort of broader economic development to kind of draw people in to create new money. So new businesses have an opportunity to sell their product and goods and services to the people that need them, and the people in turn have that money to spend on those things.
Right. They, like you said, with Belicios and General Mills, and these people that, God bless them. My family, my parents were factory workers. My grandmother, my aunts, my uncles have all done that.
Yeah,
But every time I go home and I see these folks who are maybe coming in for therapy or coming in, just heading into Walmart to shop or whatever, they're just so beat up and beat down.
yeah,
These people are in their 40s and 50s, and it's like they look like they're in their 60s and 70s because
mhm,
the area, the job, it just seems like life has beaten them down. You know what I mean? It's almost like they've given up. Here's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I'm going to be here and then I'm going to retire and I'm going to die. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And there's some kind of change that needs to happen to reinvigorate the area. And there's always going to be people having to take those jobs, and God bless them, because I couldn't do that job, man. That's hard work.
yeah,
Um, but I would love to see something come in just to be a shot in the butt.
mhm,
Give him what Barry Bonds was taking, give him that shot in the
yeah,
butt, and make some changes. I know Connie's done some good stuff there. The mayor, she's done some good stuff there in Wellston, but again, it's so hard to go. It's so hard to go back and not feel kind of depressed.
yeah. And it's almost, you almost feel like it's a mindset. Something has to shift in the mindset of people. People have to, you know, people have to be engaged. They have to be involved and want to see change. And just I man, I go back to Wellston now. I could probably count on one hand how many times a year I go back down there now. So uh, it's just I don't have my finger on the pulse like I used to.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't know what the solution is, but man, I would love nothing more than to see a thriving Wellston.
Right, because I mean, we grew up in it was a pretty fun place, you know? There was
Yeah.
always something to do. We were always
But as you
outside.
mentioned too, being out cruising around and always being out and stuff, we were that last generation, like right on the cusp before, cell phones, and
Right.
so we didn't shut ourselves in our room and just play. I mean, we played video games, but you know what? Eventually that got old, and we wanted to go out and see other people and ride our bikes across town and do these other things. I mean, it's just I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the up and coming generations. It's just a different time, and we have to. I think you always hear the argument. Um, People out on out at restaurants with their families or just out and about in town. Their faces are buried in their phone, and it just aesthetically doesn't look good. People were like, "Oh, remember when we used to talk to each other and stuff?" But they're right to some degree. But I mean, you look back at these old photos back in the 30s and 20s and stuff, and people got their heads buried in newspapers. So it's just
Right.
the mediums change. That's all. We're still the same people. We might be a little bit more addicted than we were back then, but it's definitely changed our culture for sure. And I think there's so many ripple effects because of that, like that what you're just talking about. I think people's minds have to change, and that's a tough thing to do.
Right. I agree with that, man. And like you said, we were kind of that last group that kind of did that kind of thing. I know I got my first cell phone. I think I was a senior. But again, it was his phone. It was used as a phone. Like if you need to make a
Yeah.
phone call, you
Yep.
use the phone.
Yeah.
You can do nothing else on it. And now everything's right there in
Yeah.
our hand. You don't have to leave the house. Man, I want to watch a movie. Okay, pull out your phone. Man, I need to
Yep.
go to the library. No, you don't. You want to read a book? Pull out your phone. You want
Yep.
to, it's crazy how easy that is, and people just becoming more sedentary and more just kind of closed off from, if you're in a situation where you're at a party or you're at a game or whatever, and you're just not interested, or somebody's trying to have a conversation with you, you can just shut them off and look down at your phone and kind of forget the world's even there. And I
Right.
think, and like you said, in the old days it was newspapers and things like that, but I still think I would rather be in that time period when it comes to like the communication between people. Now obviously I'm doing, we're doing this podcast on a laptop computer, right? We didn't have these when we were in
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
So technology is great and it can do a lot of great things, but I think there's got to be a happy medium. There's got to be, hey, you can have your phone for a couple hours a day and then put it away. I
Yeah.
saw an argument a few days ago where one, and I don't remember, it was on a friend's Facebook page, and they were going back and forth about banning, cell phones in school. Hey, you're coming to school, your cell phones will stay in your locker, like you're not
Yeah.
taking it out for the entire class. Well, then somebody argued, well, what happens if there is, God forbid, an active shooter or somebody comes in and tries to, you know, because it's so crazy anymore that you never know. So would you rather the kids have their phone so they could, make a call immediately if they needed help, or is it becoming such a deterrent that like, hey, just as long as the teacher has a phone, or maybe designate one person to have a phone per week, only used if necessary. You know what I mean? It's like, where do you
Yeah.
draw the line?
I mean, there's no easy answer to that question. I mean, think people tend to bring up the most extreme circumstances. And I think, teachers have their phones, and just to answer that question specifically, active shooter situation, um, if a teacher has a phone, there's plenty of teachers in the building. Communication moves very quickly these days. But I think that's a whole other argument. You're that's getting into me the argument of keeping our kids safe in the first place and allowing people to trained citizens to carry weapons in our schools. We have so many people that serve the military that are looking for jobs that would be probably more than happy to do that. I just don't. That's one thing I can't understand that side of the argument where I've tried to wrap my head around. I just can't. Like, why would you not want a trained, armed individual in our schools protecting our kids when all this stuff is happening? It's just,
Sure.
it's a no-brainer for me. I don't understand it.
I agree, and it's sad that it's coming to that. We never thought about that. The only thing I was worried about or scared of coming up in school was, oh man, I'm going to eighth grade. I got to face Mr. Downard. I've heard the stories about him.
Oh
you know,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Or
man.
man, I have to do all these periodicals for Mr. Lintela's class, or
Yeah,
don't take Mr. Huntley's news recording because he will go off. Those are the
yeah,
things we were scared of, and now you
yeah,
got to be scared of. They have these active shooter drills at every age group. It's like, what? Why should they have to worry about this?
yeah. But you're just, I mean, by doing that, you're implanting that negative in their minds already. When if you just have the program in place that doesn't involve the children, aka armed security, you wouldn't have to do those sorts of things. You'd be spending your money in a much wiser area. It's my opinion.
Sure, man. Crazy. Okay, let's I'm gonna throw a couple names out at you,
Okay.
or a couple like groups or whatever. Since it's a little, we're getting into some politics, just
Yeah.
give me the first thing that comes to mind. You can give me one word, or you can expand on what you think about these organizations or what you think about these people, things like that. Are you up for that?
Oh man, I'll have to be. I'm not. I don't think I'm the best at it, but I'll give it a shot.
That's okay. Again, it's just your opinion. If
Okay.
you don't
Yeah.
if you don't think it comes out right, you say, "Hey, man, I don't like the way that sounded. Edit that out." That's a
All
good
right.
thing about it's a good thing about this program. We can edit out anything we don't want.
All right. We'll go.
All
Let's
right,
do it.
man.
Let's do it.
So first off, let's just throw out Trump. What are your thoughts on Trump?
Oh man. So I'll elaborate on this one because when he came onto the scene, I was part of the Never Trump crowd, and it wasn't necessary. It wasn't. I just say that because it's an identifier. I don't really. I never really had any animosity towards the man like most people seem to do. Um, I've always been a Ron Paul conservative, a libertarian minded individual. So when he first came onto the scene, I was more worried about his authoritarian type presence, and so that was my concern. And I'll tell you, I did not vote for Trump
Hmm.
in the first election. But now that he has, had some experience, and I've seen how people have tried to bring him down. I think unfairly to most degrees. I think he brings a lot of stuff on himself. Obviously, I'm not a fan of a lot of the things he says, um, but I get a little bit of enjoyment, to be honest with you, out of how he gets under people's skin. I mean, people just lose their minds over these MAGA hats and stuff, and it's comical and it's sad. But I mean, we've seen great economic success. I think he's doing a pretty good job. And to be honest with you, seeing what my other options might be from the other side of the aisle next time around, I'm probably going to end up voting for the guy this time.
I'm with you on the fact I think he's taken a lot of unfair criticism, and I'm with you as far as not voting for him. Um, I didn't vote for either of the two major, candidates. This is the first time I've ever voted where I didn't do that,
Mm-hmm.
but it's almost morally like Hillary. I don't even know if I want to say anything on a tiny little podcast like this about Hillary because I don't want to end up. I don't want to end up killing myself. Um, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but I couldn't vote. The stuff she's done and the just I can't take her. If she's on TV, I'm turning the television. I just think she's kind of a vile human being. That said, there's stuff that Trump has said and stuff that he has done that you're like, dude, what? You're the leader of our nation right now. What are you doing?
Right.
But could you imagine if Twitter existed when Kennedy was president?
Oh my.
Uh, Kennedy's pretty widely loved, right? It's like,
Yeah.
can you imagine all the scandals and all the stuff with mistresses and this and that,
Yeah.
mafia ties and all this stuff with the Kennedy? Like, he would be destroyed, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, the Trump stuff, I think he has done. The job creation, the economy, the stock market has really boomed. Um, from the previous regime, I when Obama first ran, I drank that Kool-Aid. I was a fan. I liked what he had to say back when he first ran. I was like, man, I really like this guy. Changes are coming. Um, you know, I was kind of I always considered myself in the middle, but at
Mhm.
that time I considered myself a little bit more toward the left, just because of I guess
Yeah.
the far right wing stuff, the far right wing conservative stuff got. I was like, man, you guys are a little ridiculous. But now it's kind of just the opposite. You look at the left, and they've just become like, what? Do you listen to what you say? Like I don't. I think sometimes you just talk and you're not even sure what your mouth's saying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But um, yeah. So I voted for Obama twice. And it was one of those things that I think he's a good person. I don't think he did a very good, without going into too much, of my opinion. I don't think he did a great job with the country, but that's neither here or there. But I think Trump has done some really really good stuff with the unemployment, with minorities, the African Americans, which they're Americans. I hate the term African Americans.
I do too. Yeah.
It's like I'm white, you're black, we're Americans.
Well, and that's the thing. You can be black and not be an African American,
Right?
right?
I'm not a Scotch Irish. I don't call myself Scotch Irish American.
Yeah.
It's like we're Americans. Which brings me kind of to my next question for you.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on border security? Without getting into, obviously it's a pretty controversial thing.
Yeah.
But just right at the top of your head, when you think, this immigration thing, how do we have to go about this? Do you like, having guys at the border? Do you like the ICE agents? Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, you have to have something. You can't have nothing. If you generally, if you think of it logically, and this is really what the system we have now, it's part wall, part agents. They do the drone things. We have a multifaceted system at the border. But the border is the political button that people use to get people riled up and to vote for one side or the other. The border's not the issue. The issue is the economic difference between Mexico and America. People are coming here because of the opportunity. They come here because we're giving them free healthcare. You take away the incentives, they're not going to want to do that. The other side of it too, it's the immigration aspect of it. I don't think anybody is against immigration. So when you hear people in the media talk about right wingers being anti-immigrant, I think that's nonsense. That's just
Perfect.
you
You're
really can't
spot on,
get
dude. You
somebody.
were spot on.
Yeah, So I also, this goes along with the same mindset that I have with the putting the guns in the schools. I don't understand how anybody can't comprehend what legal and illegal are. Like it, you're either coming here legally or coming here illegally. There's a
Yeah,
law. Yeah,
right.
I'm either driving over the speed limit or I'm driving under the speed limit. One is going to get me a ticket, one's not. It's just, I mean, that is a black and white, simple argument. That's, I don't get how people don't understand that.
Right. That's super well said, and I agree with the immigration. Again, I'm not against immigration just because I think people should come here legally, and
Yeah,
then you get the whole argument, oh, we're all illegals, we all came here. It's like, oh, geez.
yeah. And the
It's
other
like,
thing too, it's like, oh, we're separating families. Well, don't break the law. Like if I go out and rob a convenience store, I'm going to be separated from my family.
yeah, right. They're not going to sentence you to 5 years in prison and be like, well, your daughter can come too.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, that just doesn't make any sense to me. Stupid arguments. That's what it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Do your research,
yeah,
learn before you speak. You know,
yes,
I'm not
yeah,
gonna I'm not gonna come on here and be like, hey man, so this quantum physicist came out, and I'm not gonna start spewing stuff about that because I have no idea about it. But maybe
yeah,
if I spend a couple months learning about it, then I would talk to you about it.
yeah.
So I saw a video earlier, and I don't know. Are you familiar with Andrew Young?
Andrew Young. I can't say that I am.
So he's a 2020 Democratic presidential candidate, and I hadn't really heard of him until recently,
Okay.
but I came across a video earlier today that what he wants to do, he wants to give every citizen $1,000 a month, every citizen across the nation $1,000 a month, and what he calls it will become like a trickle instead of a trickle down effect. This will be like a trickle up effect. He says that that's going to cause people to put more money into, into their towns, into the kids ball clubs and things like that, building up local businesses. He's like it's going to go right back in. What what are your thoughts about that? I'll tell you, I'll get into what I think about it, but
Yeah. So but the first thing that comes to mind, well, I think now that you mention, I might have heard something about that. It's just funny how like when things are kind of retweaked to fit your own narrative, how you can spin it to make it work for you. I mean, make that same instead of giving that $1,000 to every U.S. citizen, why not cut the taxes? Like if you're going to be if trickle up works, trickle down has to work too, right? Like more money in people's pockets, whether it's $1,000 check or it's coming to them, $100 a paycheck at a time. Like that's more money people have to spend. Like that's also a thing a no brainer. I feel like I don't know. Maybe,
yeah, that I read that this morning and I saw that this morning and my first thought was this is the dumbest thing that I've heard in a while. Like you get this stuff from Bernie and a lot of the other the Costa lady and all this stuff about free tuition. We want to have everybody gets free schooling. Like, well, who's
yeah,
are those teachers teaching for free? Where
yeah.
how are they getting paid?
Well, and
Like
this is
what?
where like I said before, it's like I would like to think I like to call myself a realist. So in a vacuum, take away the trillions of dollars of debt that this country has. Say we're running at a surplus, and you want to come to me and say, hey, I want to give everybody free healthcare. You know what? I'm much more inclined to listen when we're sitting making money as a country as opposed to shelling it out to China.
Right. Right, man. I think to correct myself, I think I said Costa earlier. I clearly meant Cortez.
Oh
She's such a crazy lady. She's anytime I even try to say her name, you're like, what? But yeah, that's a whole different thing. Giving people, I have a huge issue with that. Even like retirement and Social Security, and you see these folks who never. It's like you never worked. Why are you getting anything? Like you
yeah,
didn't contribute, you didn't put in, but
hmm
because you're an American citizen, you still get Social Security because that's how it was set up here in this country. Which something needs to be done about that. Because to me, it's like, man, I'm going out here and busting my butt. I'm blessed to have a good job that pays pretty well,
yeah,
but there's people out there who are working their butts off for 7, 8, $9 an hour, and you just want stuff handed to you.
yeah,
Like go out there if you have to nut up and work at McDonald's and you're 35 years old,
Yeah.
Do it. If you have a
Yeah.
family and you're, man, I can't find a job, bullcrap. There's jobs
Yeah.
out there. There's always jobs. It may not be what you want. You may be spinning a sign for Little Caesars out front.
Yeah.
But hey, is that paying your bills? Like, go out there, nut up, and quit looking for a free handout. That really, it just goes right through me. And I guess the guy, what he wanted to do to pay for that, where everybody gets the $1,000, he wanted to add like a 10% value added on to like consumer purchases. I'm like, so you're the people who are making money and are
Yeah.
working for it, then
Yeah.
we're having to pay more on purchases we make to give to people who aren't doing anything.
Yeah.
Like, how does that even sound like that's plausible? But it's like, dude, how does that even make sense to you? You know what I mean? It's like
You're
I
talking
just don't
about
get it.
people. If people aren't paying attention and they're not doing the research, a surface level argument like that, I mean, they'll eat that up all day long.
Head scratchers. The more I hear, again, I used to, even the last couple years, I had myself in a little bit more to the left side of that middle bar. But the more I hear these people talk, I just find myself veering more and more into that right, that right wing kind of, not, I wouldn't say right wing, just a little bit right of that line. There's plenty of things on the right that I totally disagree with, plenty of things on the left I totally disagree with, but it's almost extreme. It's almost the left has just taken things to an extreme of there's no, you can't talk to them, you can't have a rational conversation when it all comes back to bigotry or race or hating immigrants or it's like that can't be your go-to for everything you disagree with.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're right.
All right, man. Well, last one. I'm pretty sure you'll have a pretty, a pretty probably we'll probably think the same way on this last organization. But Planned Parenthood, man. What's your thoughts on Planned Parenthood?
The argument I feel like always goes back to women's health care. I actually don't have a outside of if you want to talk about abortion, you talk about Planned Parenthood.
Right. I think a lot of, not to interrupt you, but I think a lot of people when they hear Planned Parenthood, I think they automatically go to, oh, it's all about abortion. I'm like, well, that's not what it's all about. But sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, there's that's the hot button issue when it comes to the Planned Parenthood discussion, and there's definitely some shady business going on around that aspect of their business. But if there's a market in a capitalist economy for this women's health care, and there's a private industry that wants to provide that, that's great. The taxpayers shouldn't, that money shouldn't be going there. But I mean, taxpayers' money are going to other businesses, other places, and we can get into that, and it shouldn't happen, in my opinion. But there is a service I think that they provide that there's a need for. I think there's just two coins to that argument. I just think the one's the abortion side, and one's the women's health issue. And because there's so much shady stuff going on, because it's such a hot button issue. I don't think that our tax dollars should be going there at all.
I agree, and I didn't realize until I did some research into it about, as far you hear Planned Parenthood, and like we said, you always think abortion, but they said some of the research I read said that only 3% of what they do, is like abortion related, which that's 3% too many. But they also do, good stuff with like sex education and prenatal care and cancer screenings, and that stuff's great. If you're a scared 15-year-old girl who, man, I got to talk to somebody, I need help. Cool, man. That's I'm all for it. Go there, get help, talk to someone. But like you said too, on the other side of the coin, the whole abortion issue is, I'm always kind of conflicted on that because I'm like, I don't know. That's a whole hot and button topic.
Let me ask you: Have you researched the founding of Planned Parenthood? Do you know about Margaret Sanger?
A little bit, but probably not enough, honestly.
Yeah. So I guess from what I've gathered is that Planned Parenthood was basically founded to control the African American population. There's that word, African American, but
that was her goal. She was very racist. And, I'm not trying to make that tie to today. Obviously, things can change. But there is that premise and that foundation upon, they've never once come out and, at least that I've found, I could be wrong. If somebody can show me that, I'd be glad to examine it and correct myself. But I don't think they've ever came out and said, hey, this was our past. We are turning from that. That's not us. This is what we are now. I would love for them to do that.
I think that would go a long way in changing the perception of how they're viewed, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know. Like I said, I need to definitely research a little bit more into that, because I think that's something that probably 99% of the people, they don't know.
Yeah.
And the whole, the women's right. Oh, it's a woman's right to choose. It's a woman. That's your own personal opinion. That's not something for me to get out there. I disagree with abortion. I see that. To me, I guess there's extenuating circumstances that, hey, it's the child has this, then it might die, or the mother might die, or rape, incest, and it's like, but then where do you draw the line? So getting into that, you have
such a small percentage of all the abortions.
Exactly.
And you got to think too. People don't think about this. When Roe v. Wade was passed, the technology medically that we had back then was nothing to what it is today. And that's where we heard the saying, oh, well, it's just a glump of cells or whatever that we're dealing with. Well, now that we can get 3D images of the baby, like so early on in the pregnancy, you can see it's clearly not a clump of cells. So like, to be able to do something like that is just really grotesque.
Yeah, that's my thing, and I guess that kind of comes back to faith. And it's like, if that's your decision and you want to do that, that's your decision. But one day, whenever your time's up, you got to answer for that, and you got to answer for why you did what you did, and that's a whole a whole different argument. But
well, it won't relax, man.
Exactly. Well, Chuck, this has been good, man. This has been fun catching up with you. Hopefully we can get on here again and just shoot the bull about some other stuff. Talk about sports. Talk about some wrestling back in the day, things like that. Because I do want to do a couple wrestling podcasts. I've actually been on Twitter and been back and forth with a couple different guys that I'm trying to get to do the show, which I think would be kind of cool. But let's just end with maybe give me a little bit more about what you're hoping to accomplish. Give me the platform. Give me some places. Do you have some speeches lined up? Do you have some places you're going to be? Where can people come out and support you? Things like that.
Yeah. So the next opportunity to come out and show your support would be the Canal Winchester Labor Day Parade on Labor Day. I'll be walking in that parade, and that's really kind of a lot of my energy and focus right now is getting prepared for that. And then after the parade's over, that's when I really start going out and shaking hands and meeting people and asking for votes. But I've said from the beginning, I'm not doing this for myself. I'm just doing this to serve my community. This was something that somebody asked me to do, and when my community calls, I'm going to answer that. I think that there's three basic principles that a lot of people that live in Canal Winchester can all kind of rally around, and that's the three principles that I'm kind of focusing my campaign on, and that's faith, family, and community.
Very nice. That definitely fits you to a T. That's very well said. Well, man, anything else you wanna touch on, or?
Oh man, I could do this all night.
It's kind of fun, right? It's fun to, again. I've got with some people. I talked to AJ Browning there a couple weeks ago, and I hadn't talked to AJ for years really, and we used to be tight. Like growing up, it was all the time at the house playing ball and riding bikes, and you just kind of there's always that core group, and unfortunately life kind of veers you in one way or the other, and you just lose track. But it's one thing that's good about this is I want to have some old buddies on and just to talk and get reacquainted. Then hopefully that leads to, hey, let's keep in touch a little bit more. Let's keep keep that line. You do, man. It's super. But say hey to your folks for me. Like I said, I think a lot of your mom and dad. Last time I was in town, about 6 weeks ago, went to the lake and actually passed your mom there on the bike path. So it's always good to see them. But tell them hello, and I'm proud of you, man. Keep working hard, and I'm hoping to get one of those shirts. Let me know what I got to do to get a shirt. Okay?
Yeah, you got it, buddy.
All right, brother. Good luck. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Brent. I appreciate it.
All right, Chuck. Later, bud.
Bye.
Well, there you go, guys. There's my interview with Chuck Milliken. If you're in the Canal Winchester area, I highly suggest giving this guy a listen and going out and voting for Chuck. He's a great guy. Comes from a great family. You heard his platform that he's basically putting out there: faith, family, and community. This guy will work his butt off for you. He's got a great work ethic, and I highly recommend voting for Chuck. I think he will do great things for your community. Anyway, thanks, guys, for listening. Thanks to Chuck Milliken for being on the show. And we'll be back with you soon for the 5th episode of Brent Ewing's Hey Buddy podcast.